might shake other people's perceptions. Because I live in my private world where trees and lakes talk to me so much, and I find this information's beyond, I mean, they're so important for my life, and whenever I dare to share it with someone, it seems to be very valuable for the other person too, but still I don't really dare to own this. And how, maybe you have a suggestion for someone who still freaks out about their own truth. Oh. This wasn't so hard as I thought.
What, you talk to lakes?
Yes, I do too.
It's like the emperor's new clothes. You know? Everybody, maybe everybody in this room talks to lakes and trees. But nobody will say that they do because they're afraid of being thought a fool. Just like, you know, nobody says the emperor is naked because these clothes can only be seen by a wise man. So, right? So, but it's even more than that. Imagine the emperor's new clothes, and someone says, the emperor is naked. And everybody else thinks he's naked too, but they are so afraid of being seen that way that they say, you idiot, he's not naked, you're a fool. Like, so maybe somebody else, like maybe they don't speak to lakes, but maybe there's part of them that when they were a child had a magical relationship to the world, and even though they believe that lakes can talk in some way and communicate, even though they actually believe it, they will pretend not to and disparage you for. It's like in politics it happens. Like in the United States, we have the war on drugs, okay? And for a long time, no politician...
The war on Trump?
It's drugs. The war on drugs.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry, yeah. The war on drugs. And for a long time, no politician would dare question that. But actually, most politicians didn't really believe in the war on drugs. But they were afraid to say that. Because if you said that, everybody would beat you up and throw you out. You would lose your election. You would get fired from your position. So everybody pretended to be in favor of the war on drugs. And in order to show that you are on the right side, if somebody else says, I don't believe in the war on drugs, you have to join in beating them up. But I think it's changing now. And as you say, like when you actually dare to speak to somebody, they're maybe even relieved. Oh, thank goodness. You know, you say that, it gives me permission to say that too.
This is a relatively safe environment, but the practical thing is like when you walk across a place where they do something specific to tree roots and the trees tell you quite specifically what would be the better way. I wish I was as bold to call the municipality and tell them, by the way, you know what? And I would so wish I would do it in a way that would not repel this. As you said, when you talk about something that you think might get resistance, you have a method. You take the wind out of the sail, as we say.
Right.
And I think I need that bridge to.
Well, yeah, I think it would start with understanding what it's like to be the city official. You know, and then after that, it's a matter of practice and skill. There's no recipe for how to, you know, every situation's different, and it's just skillful means, I guess. Yeah, I can't offer you any more than that.
Yes, please. My question is about if you could share a little bit your thoughts on what does it mean to be a man in the news story?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I'm really exploring myself. I'd say I'm very much in the space between stories about that. Letting go of patriarchal programming. For example, like one way that for a lot of my life I would objectify women would be to see them as a way to prove that I'm a valuable person. So if a woman sleeps with me, that means that I'm good, because this scarce thing has been given to me, and that proves that I'm better than the man who doesn't get it, you know. So that, even though intellectually I rejected that, there was still a part of me that believed that and would feel validated through sex. So letting go of that is very disorienting. What's left, you know? And I guess some... yeah. So I mean, what I see has happened. You know, many men have rejected the kind of patriarchal, dominating masculine, and retreated from masculinity altogether. And what I'm interested in is recovering something that feels, that resonates with who I really want to be. That's masculine still. And I'm aware of the whole kind of gender fluid, non-binary movement that says that the concepts of masculinity and femininity are themselves a problem, and that we shouldn't identify with those things. But I don't agree with that. I think that these are not just human concepts, but these are archetypal forces that exist beyond human beings, and that are channeled through humans and through culture in certain ways. But what that means for me, yeah, I'm in the space between stories, and I don't have a map for it. I'm just being guided by my heart, you know, and what feels what's in service to life. I ran a whole online course on masculinity. There's some really good recordings there that you can find. You can find it through my website, I guess. That people who have really thought deeply about this. But none of them have the answers either.
Maybe an aspect about this topic is my impression or my feeling is that the systems that we have designed or we live in are in favor of a certain masculinity, like the whole concept of to compete is rather something masculine, and if my thinking goes also likewise, like you said, what is in service for life, and I say it's not competition but to complete, and there being a man is within something within me is about competing. Before, when we play ping pong, there is something that triggers automatically a certain competition.
Yes.
And there is like this whole field of tension in that. Yeah, what's my question?
So competition has, everything that we identify with the old story has a counterpart in a new story, like the same note at a higher octave. So competition can be a way to understand yourself better. Like maybe I think that I'm, you know, maybe I have this idea that I'm going to be a world champion ping pong player. But through competition, I discover that maybe that's not my gift after all. Or maybe I discover where my weaknesses are and where my strengths are. Maybe I learn through competition how to be more effective in giving my gift to the world. So I think that there is a place for competition. You know, I don't think that there's some aspect of human nature that is just bad. But like many other aspects of masculinity, it has exceeded its proper place. Same with like linear thinking, you know, direct, linear, I'm going to fix this thinking. Like that's a masculine trait, perhaps, and it has its use, you know, but we use it for everything. Yeah, like the analytic method. Yeah, I could say a lot more about it, but I guess I'm saying, I just have everything on the table. Even things that I had rejected before, like hierarchy, for example. You know, we see the damage that hierarchy does in the world. So we think, well, hierarchy must be bad. But then when you actually try organizations that have no hierarchy or no structure, problems arise. You don't get anything done. Or you end up with the tyranny of structurelessness, which was a concept that came out of feminism in the 1970s when they had these groups and were like, we're not going to do the male thing of having power over. We're going to have complete equality, no hierarchy in our groups. And what happened, they discovered, was that a hidden power structure emerged that was just as tyrannical as the explicit power structures, but even worse because it was not acknowledged. But someone was still in charge, someone still had the power, but they were pretending not to. So the question then is, how do we do hierarchy? And so I like the idea, for example, of floating hierarchies, evolving hierarchies, temporary hierarchies, hierarchies that draw on the competencies of different people in different situations and then dissolve, and a new hierarchy forms in the next situation, which means that the hierarchies can't be attached to positions of social power and privilege, and must be dissociated from maybe even, you know, economic structures. So yeah, I guess I would just say rethinking everything.
Yes, please.
First of all, thank you for writing your books. They've been a huge inspiration, and also for quite a few experiences and projects. In Sacred Economics, you're writing about living in the gift and working in the gift especially. So, and it's been 5 years since you've written your book or finished the book. Do you have any new, or is it, the question is it working for you personally or for people around you? Like, you start to talk in the last part of the book. You're starting to talk about some things, how you can work with clients, or kind of how you can organize working in a new way. Did you find new ways to interact with people and with money and get paid or not get paid, or how is that working for you in that time since you finished the book?
Maybe somebody should come up with 2 sentences what gift economy means, so everybody's on the same
what he's talking about is a business model, essentially, where instead of setting a price, you allow the buyer to decide the price. And I've tried many experiments with that and talked to other people who have tried experiments, and a lot of the experiments have not worked because there's many reasons why they don't work. But I think overall, again, this is the space between stories. We don't have a model to do this, and we are embedded in structures that are profoundly anti-gift. So to ask people to shift their mindset abruptly is asking a lot. You know, we have these fears in this programming. So I think the best we can do is to experiment. And, you know, I still do a lot of events by gift. But not always. You know, if I am going to speak at a mainstream event that has a big budget, you know, and they're paying other speakers, I want to get, it's a token of respect. You know, I want to know that I'm valued there. So, yeah, I'm not dogmatic about it, but I often do, if I'm self-organizing a retreat or something like that, then I often have the payment be by gift. You know, because how do I know what the value was to you? You decide. So, yeah, I think it's worked pretty well. I'm still here.
You referred to the dominant industrial culture, and if I refer to it briefly as a destructive form for our present position and the environment and so forth. Do you have in your story an explanation of the dominance of this culture, and not just simply because, you know, the people in other cultures like motor cars or something like that? I'm looking for something deeper than that.
Oh God, I mean, I wrote a 600-page book on this.
So 3 words.
Well, I think our economic and industrial system is motivated and justified and reinforced by the basic narrative that we live in, the mythology that we live in. And in turn, it strengthens that mythology. So the mythology, I already talked about it, that, you know, a universe of stuff, of objects, of insensate, dumb and blind objects. So if you accept that as truth, then why not do whatever you want to them? Why not?
Yes, but why? My question is, why would they accept that? When you go into another culture, when you go to the Amazon.
Oh, right. It was a long historical process that resulted in this. So each step of separation, of distancing ourselves from nature, gave birth to a further step. So going back to stone tools, which are the first artificial objects that artificially increase the carrying capacity of the land to support a human population. And then moving on to fire, which was the next major invention that creates a separation between the wild and the domestic and gives us a kind of lordship over nature and makes us seem special. And then the next innovation was symbolic culture, representational language, which begins to categorize the world into a bunch of things and seems to give us a special position and overlordship. To name something is to control it, to own it. And that paves the way for domestication of animals and plants, where they are turned to human purposes, separating us even another step from immersion in nature. And then that creates the division of labor, money, specialization, and eventually industry. So we're now living in a artificial world, right? So a long, long story.
So
yeah.
So I want to come back on this.
Yeah.
Now. So you're saying that we have been through these various stages of development.
Yeah.
So aren't you saying that we are actually more developed?
Yeah, along a certain trajectory. I mean, obviously, you know, it may not be the only trajectory of development. Other kinds of development are invisible to us. So Australian Aborigines have been developing technologies of dreaming for tens of thousands of years. But the advances in those technologies are invisible to us. Chinese culture developed an entirely alternative technology of medicine and energetic, body energy development. I practice some Qigong, and the lineage I practice in is only 500 years old, and represents an innovation over what came before, a whole other axis. So yes, we are highly developed along one axis.
And you mentioned the word dominant. That was my question. So, are you suggesting, or aren't you suggesting, that our Western culture, which is developed in this way, is dominant over the Aboriginal Chinese?
Yeah, it's obviously dominant.
So that was my. So I'm coming back to my question.
Why it's so contentious? Is that
No,
your
it's not
question?
a question of contention. I just want to understand why our particular pattern of development is dominant over, say, the Chinese pattern of development. That's what I'm asking. In your story, what is the explanation that this particular...
because it has domination built into its worldview.
That doesn't satisfy me.
Well,
Because it has it developed into its own worldview, but it doesn't explain why the Chinese culture would accept it. Because if you're a Chinese...
they had no choice but to accept it. I mean, look at, the history of imperialism. They were forced to accept it.
That's the
Because
cannon boat.
this development is a development in the technologies of domination.
Like the Chinese inventor of firework, right?
Right. Yeah, they invented gunpowder, but they didn't use it for domination. They weren't oriented toward domination nearly as much as we are. So we've developed the technologies of domination to their extreme. And as they reach their extreme, they reach their fulfillment, their limits, and their crisis, and their metamorphosis into something else.
So, do you mind my continuing this part?
Maybe one more little piece, because
One more little piece. So how do you relate that to consciousness?
to consciousness.
So is this dominant culture a function of consciousness?
Well, I think culture creates consciousness, and then consciousness creates culture. It's a zeitgeist.
More conscious?
It's a gestalt. It's a gestalt.
Yeah, the dominant culture is more conscious?
No, it's a different kind of consciousness. It's a unique kind of consciousness, but not more conscious. I really don't resonate with spiral dynamics and that whole map of this kind of, unilinear progression of consciousness. They call it spiral, but it's actually quite linear. No, I don't think that we're more conscious in any way. But we are more developed along a certain axis of consciousness and woefully underdeveloped in other ways. Yeah.
You're probably a person who meets quite a lot of people who are trying to move to the new story, as we call it. And my question is just, what is your impression? How many people around the world, what do you guess, how many people are around the world who are really on the way to the new world?
Everybody.
Hmm?
Everybody.
Everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I get to know somebody deeply enough, I can recognize that they're on a journey. We were all born into the world of separation, and we're all born into a unique corner, a unique little part of that world. So each of us is walking a path out of that. And some people might be, the path is so different that the path that I'm on, someone else might not take even one step on that path. But they may be on another path that I can't even see. But I know that, everybody is on a healing journey in this world. And whatever they're healing from, whatever part of the wound of separation that they've received, they're also healing it on my behalf. And whatever they're experiencing lives in me too. So we really are all in this together. There's not some who are in the new story and others who aren't. And that when you start going there, you get into elitist thinking. and some people are more conscious than others.
That's more separation, obviously.
Yeah, it's more separation. Yeah.
So it may be possible that for some people, many people that are holding back, we just can see it. They are on their way.
Yeah, and maybe they're more advanced than you or I are in a certain way, but we just don't even see it. Just as they don't see it with us, you know? They think we're idiots. We have our heads in the clouds, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I experience when I really look deeply at another human being, is I get a sense that they're on a brave journey. And it's amazing to me.
Yes, please.
Charles, are you saying that the new story is going to happen whatever we do or don't do?
Yeah, there's a paradox there. Yeah, it's inevitable that it will happen, and it depends on your contribution to it. And it's inevitable that you will make your contribution to it. There's a paradox. So yeah, it does depend on us. It won't happen just by sitting around. But sitting around won't just happen by sitting around. If you sit around long enough, you're going to have a greater and greater urge to get up. It's not so this is not about conquering some part of yourself called laziness or called ignorance, I think. Maybe I'm just making excuses for laziness and ignorance.
Thank you.
But yeah, I really fundamentally trust human nature and our desire to contribute to that, to what's beautiful to us, and our impatience with being stuck in fear. You know.
Put down a quote by you the other day. It said we should be cautious not to conquer ourselves in order to be a better person. I thought that's quite remarkable. We should be conscious not to conquer ourselves in order to be a better person. No conquering at all.
I mean, maybe there's, I don't want to discard it completely, Maybe there's a role for these, motivational techniques. But I think, again, those techniques have expanded way beyond their role.
I know I said something already, but this resonates so much with what I just realized about myself, that I was living in this world view of domination, and I didn't realize. And a part of me wants to have control over my own life, and that is so forceful. It's so
Right.
trying to dominate what's happening in my life, and I don't think I have a chance. And that's a very strong insight for me, that I'm trying to escape a system by doing the same thing to myself. Good luck.
Yeah.
Please.
I have a question about, it's really inspiring hearing you speak, and it sounds like you've uncovered a lot of truths in your life, and my question's about what's sort of the illusory nature of reality that that sort of belief is held in Buddhism about. I guess my question's in your exploration of truth, or the unraveling of things that you do so eloquently. what have you faced on the other side of what you perceive to be real?
What do I face on the other side of what I perceive to be real?
Well,
I don't quite understand.
like in Buddhism, how it points to life, the illusory nature of what we perceive as real in this world, and with what ourselves, how that might be an illusion. What are your insights around that?
Well, I could probably think of some wise metaphysical thing to say about that, or I could just do a little chicken dance like this. But I might fall off the stage. Like I'm hesitant to step into that. I mean, I could make these points about, you know, if reality is an illusion, and what about an illusion? What's that? And that must be different from reality. So are there illusory illusions and real illusions? And you get bogged down in the language becomes a trap. So, but what I would say is that what we call reality is woven from stories. And we are not the creators of these stories. The stories, like everything else in the world, have their own consciousness, their own beingness, and their own intelligence. And there's a strange resonance with quantum mechanics, that the world is composed of stories or information rather than discrete objects and things, composed of communicating relationships. But you know, like there's this whole idea that the way to navigate this world is first you have to come to the correct metaphysical principles, the basic axioms of reality. And once you've got that, then you'll understand everything and you'll be able to deduce how to operate in the world. It's the axiomatic method that originated in mathematics and physics and has been kind of imported into everything else. I guess my answer is I don't think it's necessarily important to understand that. And I don't have an answer. I don't know why people think that I have an answer like that. You know, I'm just some guy with some ideas, really. I would say I don't think I'm especially enlightened, but I don't even necessarily believe in such a thing. So, yeah. And I'm starting to think, like, am I on purpose giving people the impression that I'm super smart or super wise in order to feel good about myself? What a pointless exercise that would be. I'd go to my grave and it'd be like an epitaph. Everyone thought he was pretty darn smart. Like, what good does that do me or the world, you know? Anyway, I'm sorry I can't give you a more satisfying answer, but I'm getting a little tired too. Yeah.
Can you speak a bit about ideas and intellectual property? Because is it your idea or mine, and how does that change our world? And old story, new story.
Yeah, I find that I don't think that I have I don't think I have ideas. I don't think my ideas are my ideas. I don't think that I made them. Either I got them from someone else, or they emerged in a conversation, or they just came to me. But you've had that experience, right? An idea comes to you. Well, if it comes to you, then why do you think that you get to control it and own it and profit from it? I quoted Lewis Mumford. You know, he said, a patent is a device by which one person claims exclusive rights to the end result of a long social process. It's not fair. Same thing with copyright, same thing with music. Yeah, so I don't think that they're my ideas. They've come to me, but if they didn't come to me, they'd come to somebody else because their time has come. It's, you know, lots of people are thinking of similar things. Do we have a young one here?
Yeah. I'm tired too.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. I have four children.
Well, I think it's about time for the last question. If not, that's okay too.
Well, I don't have a question, but I just want to add something. And first of all, thank you, both of you. And you just spoke before about the two stories. And it's funny because like in the first story or the old story, there are many stories in that story because I grew up in two worlds, two different cultures. And it's quite different, like the first culture, the traditions, the mentality and the culture is so much different than the second one. So first you try to fit in the first story and then you see, I don't fit here because I'm so different. And then you try to fit into the second culture story and then you see, I don't fit either here. So then you are like in a gap and you try to figure out what is really real or what is important. And through spaces like this or communities or weird friends, you discover not really weird. So just thank you.
Feels like adding something. My wife, myself, we have adopted a son from Thailand, and he's, as you may imagine, is about the same situation, living in Switzerland. And took us 11 years to go back to Thailand and check places where he had been living in his first 4 years. And eventually the closest and the most beautiful thing we went through was meeting a couple, also being tourists in Thailand. The guy was from India and his girlfriend from South Korea. And I said, well, let's go for dinner tonight. You are an odd couple, we are an odd family. And that's a perfect fit, and we had so much fun.
Yeah, thank you everybody for your attention and sharing this space and your warm welcome to Switzerland.
Hope to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you.